Welcome back. I now have with me Sam Mercurio, one of the other candidates for one of those two at-large positions. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So let's jump right in. Who are you and why are you running?
Well, I've been a resident of Framingham for all of my remembered life. My parents moved here when I was an infant, so I can't tell you if I've been here for 62 or 63 years, but I've been here forever. And I actually grew up on the south side of Framingham, almost in Ashland. We then moved to Knobscot, and I lived there until I started finding apartments, and I lived in Framingham Center, not more than 2 blocks from this station. I've lived in apartments on the south side, bought a house on Grant Street, ended up selling that, and moving to Knobscot. So I've lived on both sides of town. That's why I decided that having a little bit of knowledge of both places, actually pretty deep knowledge of both sides of town, probably put me in a better position to consider at large than to run for council for my particular district. So that's the main reason that I decided to do this.
And folks who live in town have probably seen you at the concerts on the Green.
They've probably heard my voice many times because I'm the announcer for the concerts on the Green, and I do all the live sound mixing. But few people actually see me because I'm in a tent in the middle of the field, and only rarely am I up on the stage. I usually do the announcements at the beginning of the season from the stage, and if I have time. But it's a lot of work to go back and forth between the stage and the sound booth in order to just make a simple announcement. So I can do all that from the board.
Well,
they can come over and say hi.
There you go. And you can go knock on their doors later on Saturday
morning.
And
that's what I've been doing. I've been actually finding the signatures by actually walking from door to door. I've covered the entire town, probably walked 100 miles in the past few weeks. But that doesn't mean that I'm done. Even after I leave here today, I will go out and knock on more doors. And I've discovered, I always knew it was a diverse community, but I've discovered it's more diverse than even I realized. So it's kind of nice to see that. Getting to hear the problems from people on the street, what they consider an issue, which is always a local issue. We need a stop sign outside my house. No more local can it be than that. But driving from one side of town to the other shows me how difficult those issues can be for people. If you have to make a doctor's appointment, you live on the north side and you have it on the south side, you have to give yourself an extra 20 minutes. Just little things like that. And those are the things that really concern people. Are they going to close my school? Are they going to expand my school? All of these things are what I hear about. I'm worried about the forest behind my house. Is it going to become a development? And that's really what people are concerned about. So by going from neighborhood to neighborhood, I get to hear these issues and I'll be able to bring them forward. And hopefully at the council, if somebody says something, I can say, well, this is what people are really concerned about.
Oh, excellent. Are there other issues? So you mentioned traffic, you mentioned celebrating the diversity in town. Are there a couple other issues that have really driven you to run?
I've been here all my life, and I have been in favor of the charter this time and the previous one. And I was in favor of it because of different reasons, but particularly this time was because of the lack of equitable representation throughout what is now the city. That was a real concern of mine, that people from one side of town might not get the opportunity to have their voice heard. And I think that's important. I plan to have office hours in different locations throughout the town during the course of a year. Other things that come to mind, people tell me, they're tearing up all the streets all the time. Well, the water pipes in this town are 100 years old. And need to be replaced to be compliant with current regulations. We have great tasting water. We have good water in town. It costs money to make that happen. And you can't just be doing constant repairs on an emergency basis. So the MWRA decided, well, Framingham's the biggest town in our system. We're going to let them be the first to actually replace all of these antiquated pipes. And that's why we put up with it. And it doesn't happen overnight. As people know, it's been 3 years so far, and it's still going to keep happening.
Well, excellent. I know over the course of the next several months, as you knock on people's doors, you'll hear about other issues that I'm sure will touch your heart, and you'll be able to talk about those at length as well.
Yeah, one of the issues I've discovered, my own issue, is knocking on doors and discovering a lot of people who can't even answer my first question is, are you a registered voter? Because there are at least 5 languages that I've run into,
Yes.
and probably more. So that part of the community is underserved.
And I think one of the hopes that the proponents of the Charter Commission had was that a representative city council with 9 districts will allow for hopefully greater diversity and representation. And as one of the potentially 2 at-large people, you would be tasked, you two and the mayor, with having to actually represent the entire town.
Right.
And so it's a great opportunity, but also a great challenge to make sure that you don't allow your own neighborhood or nook of town to be of paramount importance to you.
Where I grew up was primarily last names that ended in vowels, mostly Italian immigrants from before I ever was there. And over the years, then it became Puerto Rican, and then slowly became Brazilian over the years. So I anticipate that the next group of immigrants that come in will again come into that part of town. And people from that part of town tend to move to other parts of town or move outside of the town.
And hopefully continue to add to
it continues to change,
the richness of...
which is what the town's grown, and as it's grown, it's become more and more diverse.
So actually on that subject, one of the questions I'm trying to ask of all the people running for the at-large position is, in this political climate nationally, recent immigrants, as they've reached out to me, are concerned. They're concerned about their kids going to school, they're concerned about deportations, and they're looking to towns and cities and the state to do something to help them feel safe or to actually be more secure. And one of the things that I'm confident the new Framingham City Council will be invited to explore doing would be to make sure that our local immigrant community does feel secure and safe. And I'm curious, for people running for this position, if you have thoughts on what Framingham could do or should do to make those communities feel more secure.
Well, historically, this town has been an immigrant community from day one. I mean, outside of the few Native Americans who might be here, there's no one here that was here in the beginning. We've been here over 300 years, and we've seen things change. During that time, we haven't had real bad issues. We've had some, but over the years, it's actually a pretty good place to be. People that are nervous now based on federal regulations, the first place they're going to turn will be to the local community. And they have to understand that even though we're changing from a town meeting and a town government to a city government, that they still can come to each one of us with a concern about what might be an issue for them. And that's really important. They need to understand that we are there representing them, that our funds may come down from the federal and state government, but we represent the people of the community, and that's what makes the difference, that they need to understand that we're on their side, not the other way around.
Well, excellent. I think you put that quite well. So you have several months ahead of you. There'll likely be a primary in September where voters will have a chance to narrow down the pool to, I think, 4 at-large members.
Yeah, I believe it's going to be however many on the ballot in the primary, down to 4, and from 4 to 2.
4 to 2. And you're going to be spending the next several months knocking on people's doors and talking about the issues that are important to you. I'm curious, in closing, and our time always goes so fast in these contexts, to talk a little bit about what it is about Framingham that makes it the kind of town that you are happy to continue to make your home. Your parents made that choice for you before you were able to remember things, I think, as you put it. But you have constantly made the choice to continue to make Framingham your home. We were just talking beforehand about your involvement in the community before choosing to run, and putting yourself out there to run for a position takes, as I remember from last year, a little bit of time, a little bit of energy. Not something that everyone does. And so I'm curious, what is it about the soon-to-be city of Framingham that makes it the kind of place that you're happy to do all that for?
Well, as I said, I've been here all my life. I didn't make the choice to be here, but I've chosen to stay. Certainly in the years with my careers, I've had the opportunity to go elsewhere, but I've decided, there's good people. I have friends here. I have relatives here. I'm going to be buried here. That I already know. That my spot's already up the street.
Excellent.
So I'm here my entire life. Is that good or bad? Well, I think it's good. I think that part of the problems that we see nationwide are the migratory nature of our society now. People keep moving from place to place and they never really get to put down those roots. I'm glad that I've had that opportunity. You know, there's been a lot of things over the years. The Concerts in the Green, as we've grown that's probably the single largest gathering of Framingham residents on a regular basis. And that's been a very handy thing to get to know people. I've tried to make it as diverse forms of entertainment as possible so that we represent everybody in the community. And I think that's what's important, is to stay here and to make things better. During this transition from town to city, one of the differences from the government going forward is that the at-large councilors are only going to be elected for a 2-year position this first time around. After that, it's a 4-year position. So that in itself is nice. It means it gives us 2 years of transition time. Sure, there's going to be problems, but I don't think things are so bad in the town of Framingham that we have to make huge changes. And I've considered myself, at this point looking back, I guess I consider myself a townie. And I hope to be that townie voice on the city council. So that if somebody says, oh, we need to make this huge change, I can say, well, wait a minute. We've gone 300 years without that kind of a change. What makes it so important that we make it now? Let's sit back and look and gather the information necessary to make wise decisions to help the city move forward for the next 300 years.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for coming on the show, for speaking to folks about why you're running and your deep commitments to this town. For those of you watching at home, I hope you will explore all the candidates running for these 2 at-large positions. As I said prior, there will be other shows that round out all of the candidates, conversations with all of the candidates, and I hope you will stay tuned for those as well. Until next time, thank you.